Hi, good morning. Today I want to talk a little bit about a mind technique of choice, and that is to what the Buddhists call reframe. And this is a powerful technique where basically you choose consciously how you see a situation. And that might be after your initial unconscious past conditioned response to a situation, and you actually decide, no, I'm not going with that. I'm actually going to look at this again. And you choose maybe to see it differently. And this is very powerful because to be able to do that, A, you've got to be consciously aware. B, you've got to be noticing how you are responding and reacting to the world. And you are actually being the witness to your own perspective, your own personality perspective. So who is witnessing it? Who's making this choice? Who's making this decision to maybe see a situation differently, or to step back until you have more information before developing an opinion, or especially before expressing an opinion? And so reframing is very powerful, but it goes against a lot of our social conditioning. People are really uncomfortable with it. There's nothing like someone putting the silver lining in a group of people who are there to mutually moan, to stop the conversation and create an awkward pause. So it's not just sort of turning everything to the positive in a sort of an unrealistic or fairy tale way at all. No, what it is it's looking for the deeper reasoning, the deeper meaning behind what's going on. It's lifting up into what I would call a soul perspective of a situation and trying to glean greater understanding. And as you know, that's standing under greater truths about a situation. So it also aligns with a higher vibrational energy and a realization, and this is the key one, that energy follows thought. So if we start to choose how our mind operates, how we see a situation, or even just the pure questioning of our usual response, this is lifting up into the higher mind that observes. And the soul energy, the soul perspective can come through then. There's a channel. Whereas if we're stuck in the mire of thinking and behaving and responding the same old way all of the time, which is safe, and people like that sameness, and often reframing is very unpopular because it challenges people's same old perspective. It challenges their choices. It challenges their past beliefs. It challenges beliefs that may be based on the past and are not rooted here and now in what's going on in the present, and have taken no allowance for the changes that have happened between the past and now. And the other thing to realize is that our unconscious mind listens to our words. So when our unconscious mind hears us, say, giving a negative spin on something or moaning about something all the time, that starts to play out in our life. Energy follows thought. We will attract more of what we focus on. And the unconscious mind doesn't have any discrimination or any this is good and this is bad. It's like a sponge that absorbs what you're feeding it. And your words are feeding your unconscious mind the same way your unconscious mind from your past are feeding your words. This is if you're operating in an unconscious way. When you start to become more aware and start to become more conscious of your thoughts, of your words, of your actions, you have more discrimination. You discern. You may make choices to be quiet when you're not sure about a situation, when you don't have enough information. You may question your own response to it. And the thing is, I'll explain a little bit how these patterns get really deeply ingrained in the unconscious mind. So we may have a thought in our mind, and it may not even be our thought, and it may not even be true. But that thought, say it's a fearful thought, and say it's a thought that's come from our external environment, maybe someone else has said something, or we've watched something, and it's created, this thought is disturbing. So it's one that's stuck out for us. In that thought in our mind will create chemicals that go into our body that create a sensation of fear, that sort of uncomfortable gut feeling, that heart beating a bit faster, maybe sweaty skin, just a feeling that you're not safe. Now, those uncomfortable feelings in the body then feed back to the mind, that then looks for other experiences in our life that either support or negate this thought. And more often than not, a scary thought will bring up more scary thoughts along the same theme. And this is how something that was just a thought and just an idea, suddenly you find yourself thinking in ways that support that thought, that give examples of how that's true, that, oh yeah, and it starts getting bigger, because the more your mind does that, the more the chemicals in your body create that discomfort, and then that feeds back to the mind, and we wind up in a real loop. And so that one thought that may or may not have been true has set off a whole state of anxiety. And we're now in a fear state, very vulnerable and totally ruled by the unconscious mind. And this, when this happens regularly enough around a certain thought, we develop a groove. They talk about neurons that fire together, wire together. We develop patterns in our unconscious mind that become beliefs until we actually believe in this thought. And also we start to believe, well, if I'm having such a visceral response to a thought, it must be true. And that's just not the case. It's just a visceral response to a thought in our mind. And so when we've gone around that groove regularly, it becomes literally part of who we are. It becomes a personality trait. So if I'm a worrier, I become, and I have a worrying thought, oh, what if that happens? Say it's your children, what if that happens? And then the physical response, oh, this could happen. Oh, that could happen. Oh my God, such and such talked about this happening. And suddenly more and more visceral, more and more mental mind body chaos. And we're in an absolute state, ringing our kids, where are you? What's happened? And they're like, Mom, what's going on? We've got into a state. And if we do that often enough, we become a worrier who can't sleep whenever we don't know where our children are and what they're doing. And we cannot let them go out into the world because the world's not a safe place for them. And it becomes our paradigm and our perspective. And this is very powerful because those hormones, those chemicals that are going from the mind to the body and from the body back to the mind, this feedback loop is very powerful, very powerful. But we can work it in the other way. So if we have that thought and we reframe it, we stop the loop. In that moment that we see that thought, something on the news is really negative and we feel it in our physical body and we go, no, stop. And we stop that process. And it might just be that we stop the process of fear from grabbing us because we know that it doesn't have any use. You know, the only way we can make a difference is to keep our vibration high, is to stay in love. And we might try to reframe this situation from a place of compassion, from a place of love, from a place of greater understanding. Well, those people are behaving in that way because they're feeling this way. And start to understand, stand under greater truths. But to be able to reframe, you have to be able to step back and witness thoughts. You have to have that awareness, that conscious awareness that just notices your response to a situation. And this is, then you challenge the validity of the rightness of your view. Okay, you say, right, well, the news is only presenting one side of this. There's got to be another side to this. I don't know enough about this to take that information as truth or not. Do you see? You start to step back into the power of your discrimination, the power to step back and say, is this a good source? Is this an unbiased source? Is this a well-researched, independently researched source of information? And that is getting more and more challenging in a world that's increasingly censored, and views that are becoming increasingly narrow and threatened by views that are wider. And when you question and challenge your view, you challenge the validity and the rightness, you create an opportunity to have a choice to have another view. So, for example, and this is the power of meditation. Meditation gives you that power to detach, to discriminate and discern right. And we are blessed as human beings with a very deep, what I call internal truthometer. And this is at the level of the soul. This is not at the level of fear and doubt in the personality. This is when you go into quietness, into stillness. When you take something into the very depths of stillness, not into the chaos of a fearful mind. And in there, we can recognize three qualities, because these are the qualities that we are, that our soul is. And because we are those, we recognize the resonance of a similar frequency, a similar vibration. And those three qualities are truth, beauty, and goodness. So we can recognize beauty because we are beauty. We know what goodness feels like because we have goodness within us. We know what truth feels like because we have truth within us when we get to the deepest soul level of who we are. Now, the problem is that very cunning people know that to present some information, you put just a smattering of truth in there, and you kind of put some of the falsehoods or the coercive information in and around that truth, because people will resonate with the truth and it'll be like, well, it might be right. It feels like it might be right. And you're picking up the aspect of truth that's in there. And it's very hard often to sort of weed out that which isn't. And this reframing, this choice to see things from a soul perspective, is something that can bring us into a state of joy rather than allowing ourselves to drop into a state of despair. And reframing is something, if we, for example, if we choose to forgive, we're not condoning behavior, we're not forgetting about actions that have happened. We're choosing to reframe. We're choosing to recognize that whatever went on, I have something, I feel there, I have a grievance with somebody else over some behavior or some action, and these can be awful, awful behaviors or actions, but they can still be forgiven. And I choose to recognize that that happened. I played a part in that person was doing the best they could with where they were and what they understood and what was going on for them. And I might not be aware of that. And I also recognize that holding on to that grievance is causing me suffering, it's causing them suffering, and there is no room for redemption or healing or moving forward. It holds us stuck in a pattern. And this is what I talked about. People are afraid to change their mind. In our society, you're seen as sort of weak or flaky if you change your mind, where in actual fact, changing your mind is a huge act of courage and a strength to be able to say, actually, I see this differently now. I am changing my mind. And this is also changing your mind is to be on a path of growth. It's to say, you know, what I knew yesterday, what I knew my 20-year-old self was only part of the truth. I know more of the truth now. I'm more in touch with what we call wisdom. I have learnt, I have grown, I have been prepared to change my mind. But people find safety in known beliefs and patterns and sticking to their view, and sometimes they'll hold on to it till the end, despite evidence that it's maybe not as true as they thought it was, or things have changed. But that is fear, holding on to what they know and being driven by those beliefs in their unconscious mind. So examples, if you've watched the Mission Joy film of the beautiful relationship between the Dalai Lama and the late Sir Desmond Tutu. Both men spent a week together. They are very firm friends. In fact, they're wonderful together. They have a very deep love for each other, despite having very differing ideologies and viewpoints. They found their commonality. They recognize that if you hold to convictions, that separates us. But when you change your mind, there is a commonality amongst belief systems at the core of them. And these two wonderful men describe in the film and explain how they were able to still resonate with joy, still live from a place of joy, loving kindness, and compassion for their fellow man, despite what has happened to them and their people and what they have witnessed. And obviously, as two world leaders, this is wonderful to see. It's interesting, I've just watched a YouTube video where Peter Ustinov follows the travels of Mark Twain, and he comes to South Africa. And he goes to Robben Island and he talks to people, and he has a brief interview with Nelson Mandela. And in that, in his speech in the video, Nelson Mandela said, you know, in jail, you had time to sit down. And this is something he said, once you're out of jail, you don't have this time. He said, you sit down and stand away from yourself and look at your record and be able to say, if I get another chance, this is the role that I'm going to play. I'm going to do it differently. So that step, he's describing that stepping back, that detaching from your identification and attachment to your former self, your former views, and saying, actually, if I get another chance at this, I'm going to choose a different role to play. And oh boy, that man chose a different role to play. He went into jail, a very angry, violent man, very attached to his convictions, and came out a man who could transform a country and still affects many people's views in the world. They talked about the concept in the African belief system of Ubuntu, which says, I am because you are. So a beautiful, beautiful, just the word Ubuntu has a resonance with unity, with recognizing we are the same, we are one. And it's humility in African terms. And humility is the capacity to reframe and change your mind, to put yourself in another's shoes and walk a mile, to have the compassion to understand another. So this is it, when we feel overwhelmed by what's going on in the world, we have a choice. We've got to be aware that if we're bombarded with a certain viewpoint often enough and with enough emotional charge, it will affect even the strongest mind. It will affect even the strongest energy field. It will bring down even the most heart-centered, uplifting individual. So we have to look after ourselves in a way, and we have to recognize that if the negativity of the world, if the fear and the wars and the conflict are starting to get to us, we need to step away. We need to go and sit quietly and connect with nature and go inward to connect to that deep peace and love and the feeling of unity we have for humanity, and the trust and hope that we will find a way, and that what we're witnessing in the world is like bringing out all that needs healing as part of the healing process. This idea of conflict brings us to harmony once we're honest and it's out there. But if you've had enough, take yourself away. If you're finding that people who are very negative or have very set ideas are affecting you, take yourself away. Go and connect with your soul so that you can keep your vibration high and you can connect with love. Because it's only when you connect with love that you can truly do something that makes a difference to this world. And, you know, I've talked in many other videos about when we're vibrating in love, that is resonating out into our energy field and touching all that we come in contact with. When you're the one in the group who reframes something, just for a moment, you get others to question, even for a moment, their very grooved sort of set way of thinking, and they may respond and react very negatively because you've challenged their beliefs. But for a moment, they understood, just for that split second, even if they didn't want to, that they have a choice to think that way because you're choosing to think a different way. And that's like, oh, this person's thinking outside the box. Oh, maybe I'm stuck in a box. Quite often we don't know we're in the box until we meet someone or something that's outside the box. And we may be comfortable in our box and feel safe and secure, and we have lots of others in our box, but we may recognize that it's a cage and a prison. And that really changing our mind gives us freedom to be who we are, to make our choices, and to think in a way that is our highest, a way that, and to also own that we are work in progress. Do you know what I mean? We're still learning. You know, I understand more today than I did yesterday. Doesn't mean I was wrong yesterday. It just means that I'm evolving. I'm on a beautiful path of growth and learning. And, you know, that is aligned with the evolution of consciousness as a whole. Every Buddha made, nature rejoices. So every time someone lifts their vibration, every time someone changes their mind, every time someone forgives, someone chooses love, not war, every time we join a peace meditation, every time we choose to understand and not react, we understand another situation and we have compassion, we are raising the collective consciousness of humanity. And you know, and I know that at the moment, the collective consciousness of humanity really needs raising. And I've talked to you before, the few can raise the consciousness of the many because the energies in those higher realms are so powerful and light and full of light and full of truth and full of love. So we can choose to be joyful. It just depends how we want to see a situation. We can look back at suffering and say, instead of being the victim, oh, poor me, look what I've gone through, we can say, what did I learn? What capacities and capabilities do I have now? How can I help others who are stuck in the mire of that suffering? How can I extend a hand of understanding and help them move out of suffering and back to joy? So this is why I wanted to talk to you about reframing, because it's a conscious choice. You know, when it's raining outside, I can choose to moan about the weather, or I can think, well, you know, we really need this rain. We really need the cleansing of the rain. And I can choose to put on rain gear and get out in that rain, or I can choose to have a day of quiet contemplation that a rainy day gives me. And to step back like Nelson Mandela did, and to step back and have a look at our life and have a look at our choices and see if there's some tweaks and changes that maybe are required. And maybe we can choose to just, that negative mind, body, thought, feeling loop. Maybe we recognize one of them. We say, actually, this is not serving me or anybody else. If I stop, the minute a thought comes into my mind, I say, well, is this true? I step back and question that thought. And no, actually, I don't think that thought is true anymore, and it certainly doesn't serve me. And you stop the power. You stop that loop. So it's your freedom. It's your freedom to choose to change your mind, to grasp it. Don't let it go, because it's precious. So now we're going to go into a meditation. And this is to teach us just the power of this capacity to step back. So to understand that when we're meditating and we notice our mind is wandering and it's being pulled this way and that way, notice the things that pull your mind. Your ego lower mind that doesn't want to change, likes the groove, wants you to stay as you are. It's very clever, and it will grab you with the one thought that will get you every time. Recognize it. Okay, so that's how you get me. Recognize it now, and you start to view these thoughts. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a meditation where we're just going to sit. We're going to go deep into the quiet, and then as thoughts come in, we're just going to recognize them as positive, negative, or neutral. We're not going to go on a long dialogue thinking about why they are, and if you don't know, they're neutral. It's almost like we're swiping with our phone. So thought comes in, negative. Thought comes in, positive. Thought comes in, neutral. Just to recognize and developing this muscle of detachment, this capacity to observe thoughts and step back. And then when we've had enough of that, we'll go into the peace. Okay, get yourself comfortable, sitting reasonably upright in your chair. You want your feet uncrossed, hands gently resting in your lap, feet on the floor ideally. And just let everything that I've just spoken of go. I want you to arrive in this moment. So take a deep breath and feel yourself settle. You're going to send a beautiful connection through your feet, through the base of your spine, down through the floor, through the building you're in, doesn't matter how high up you are, right down into the earth underneath. So we're grounded in what's important. We feel that connection. Because remember, love is connection. Now come into an awareness of your body sitting on the chair. Feel the clothes on your skin. Open to the sounds of your environment, so that you are fully present. Now take that same awareness, and I want you to focus on your breath. So just watching the breath as it comes into your body, watching the breath as it leaves. And then naturally allow it to slow down. Allow the breath to get a little deeper with each cycle. Until it feels comfortable to breathe from your belly. Ideally, as we breathe into our belly. As we breathe out, tummy comes back towards our spine. You can place your hands on your tummy, breathe into your hands. As you breathe out, your hands come back towards your body. And just let the breath be slow and deep. And this stimulates the vagus nerve, which gives a release of oxytocin, which is the bonding, connecting hormone. So it helps you to connect mind, body, soul, and to feel safe and connected with all living things. Now let your mind rest on the breath, just following its path. And you will find it takes you into an inner awareness of the breath. When your mind wanders, as soon as you recognize it has, just bring it back to the breath, and we come back with an attitude of loving kindness. Until you start to feel a connection with a deep peace, even if momentarily. And this connection will give you the space to observe your thoughts. So thoughts are still present in your mind, but you start to be able to observe them. Now, quite often when we start to observe our thoughts, the mind goes very quiet. The thoughts hide. If this is the case, just allow that to be and enjoy the peace. But if thoughts are still playing, just simply recognize them as positive, soul affirming, negative, fear based, or neutral. And don't spend a lot of time on the categorizing. Let it be instantaneous and let them go. And now just allow that categorizing of the thoughts to dissipate. Let your mind rest on the breath and let it just take you deep down into the peace, the nourishing peace within you. And let that peace fill your whole being, so that you become a beacon of peace. And from this place of deep connection with your inner truth, set an intention that you will only use words of kindness and love to describe yourself. Whenever you make a statement, I, or a statement about yourself, these words will resonate with kindness and love. And this will enact great healing. Now gently begin to arise from the meditation, still keeping your eyes closed, but coming back into an awareness of your physical body, just moving as you need to. And then as you open your eyes, I want you to open your eyes and see through the eyes of your highest self, your soul. And in that moment before thoughts intrude, just let the world be as it is. So just open your eyes with full awareness. And as you can see here, the sun has come out. Namaste.